Welcome to Travel Market Life, your companion for industry insights and professional business development. Travel Market Life. Join us by webcast, video or podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Travel Market Life, Hoteliers Voice Season 3. In today's episode, we're featuring Vineeth Purushothaman, Regional Director, Commercial Planning and Distribution EMEA for Wyndham Hotels Resorts. We'll be talking distribution, following his article, 18 Trends to Watch in Hotel Distribution 2023 and Beyond, from his LinkedIn, which you can find in the link below in the description. We'll be covering in our conversation the Bleisure market, regulatory changes, cybersecurity, and Fintech. But before we do, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on this journey with Travel Market Life. It's been an incredible 3 years and we've really grown. The last 6 months has been phenomenal with near double the growth in audience. So if I could just ask you, please, if you could leave a review, give some ratings to the podcast, share it with your friends, your colleagues, your peers across LinkedIn, through email, and just basically recommend us. We are on a fantastic road ahead, and I really hope to also meet some of you. Now, coming up over the next few months, in September, I'm going to be hosting the ACE Hotel Tech Summit in London. I will also be at the Independent Hotel Show London, where I'll be moderating a technology discussion on AI, as well as hosting 3 separate sessions at the social business space. So check out the programme for more information. I'll also be back at the International Hotel Technology Forum 2024. Thank you ever so much again. I've really enjoyed serving you these last 3 years and cannot wait for the coming few years ahead of us.
Travel Market Life.
Vineeth, thanks ever so much for joining us today to look at distribution. Now, it's an area that has completely changed over the last 10 or 15 years. Why is there such an art to distribution today?
Hey Ryan, great to be here. Thanks for having me. So distribution, I feel, I've got to sort of maybe reference it a little bit to what revenue management used to be probably about 20 years ago, where it was a real dark art where people said, oh, revenue management, this is something mysterious. We don't know what to do, how to do it, etc. And then, 20 years fast forward, you have a more sophisticated environment. You have revenue management systems, trained revenue managers, revenue management courses at university. Distribution suddenly has, appeared as a sort of next wave of where the industry needs to be. And if you think about it, revenue management can only optimize and maximize once you have the top line revenue coming in. So where is your top line revenue coming in? And that's where distribution comes in. So the distribution channels are key to driving that revenue that needs to flow into the hotels and for the revenue managers to maximize it. So I feel it's a turn of distribution to hold the limelight now, and there's lots to do. It's a messy business.
It's quite interesting what you say there, because there's channel managers. Can't you just leave them to do the job?
Yeah, you could. Channel managers have been around for a while. However, I think there is a better understanding of what needs to happen within the ecosystem. And also it's constantly changing because it's not just the technology. So if you look at property management systems, originally they were just doing property management, whereas now they do, channel managers are blended in. But then if you look at large hotel companies like Wyndham, channel managers are just not adequate to handle the volume of business and, checks on ARI, availability rates, inventory checks that are required. So yeah, it's far more than channel management. It's sort of the simple way to address it. And there's so many ways, so many parts of the ecosystem that needs to be looked at.
Now, within your article, you identified a number of key trends and factors that need to be considered really when looking at distribution, optimizing it. So I want to look at some of those in our conversation, and I'm only going to pick up some of them because otherwise this podcast will go on forever if we look at the whole 18. But for a summary for anyone, head to Vineeth's profile on LinkedIn and you can find his article, 18 Trends to Watch in Hotel Distribution 2023 and Beyond. So first one, Bleisure. Now, this is a market that everyone's been talking about really since the pandemic. I think we've seen the wheels really get into motion now. What are you noticing, and what are the key aspects that need to be considered from a distribution perspective then?
I think, I mean, what a lovely word, right? Bleisure, whoever came up with it, delightful. But guess what? I mean, it sort of does a job, so we don't have to be fans of the word. But the reality is, I think post-COVID and over that period, it's evolved quite a lot. It isn't particularly new. The word was, if you think about the phrase, was coined many years before that. But I think it has taken additional prominence because leisure came very much back. Business travel completely dropped out, and business travel is now picking up. But then the leisure continues to be important. So there's a bigger blend of that business and leisure coming through. So I mean, part of the challenge, of course, is when that blending has increased, how are we as hotel companies satisfying that requirement? And so there are different perspectives. So the product, does it serve the mixed customer that we're getting? So could it be a business traveler who's traveling and then wanting to stay, add on a couple of days, maybe a family joins the person, and that's sort of increasingly happening, and also even the individual staying for longer. So then you think, okay, now is the hotel room set up for both work and play? What does the product need to do? What kind of amenities do you need to have? Do you need to have better coffee than just an Nescafe granules? So there's all kinds of questions, even for regular hotels, let's say regular business hotels, that need to sort of answer. So that's sort of from the product side, but also in the distribution of booking side of things, it becomes also challenging for travel management companies. So obviously travel management companies are there to serve a purpose, which is to capture and process the business travel requirements, but are they then in turn set up for capturing the leisure business? Does it go through the same channels? Do you book business travel, the first part of your trip, through the TMC, and then the rest of it through, I don't know, an OTA or through the hotel direct channels? So those are sort of some of the distribution conundrums that need to be addressed, and obviously it's not fully there yet because it's still evolving. So I think that's the distribution side. So you asked me earlier on saying, why is distribution so important? Because how we answer to this, how do we set up the product, how do we set up rate plans, how do we set up all of these things in our systems, and how our business structures evolving to meet that new requirement or additional requirements. So that becomes quite challenging because it's not easy to address.
Yeah, because I mean, the conversations that I've had with a lot of hoteliers is that if it's a business hotel, they now need to be really thinking about the leisure traveler, and if it's been a leisure hotel, they need to be thinking how they actually incorporate what the business traveler wants. And I would just think, well, it's a fusion of the two, surely. But actually, it seems that there are slightly different needs for a leisure traveler compared to just a pure business or a pure leisure traveler there.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think understanding it is, and you can only find out over time. I mean, it comes through information that's obviously publicly available, but it's also the nature of your own product, your own location, your own services, that are required, because people are looking for slightly longer stays. And I think, as soon as you're staying longer, then as we all have traveled, and we all feel limited in some ways about what's possible. So it also are the opportunities to have those additional sales, additional possibilities by talking about the destination. What are the things that you need to look at, pre-booking, during the booking, post-booking, and during the stay. So you really have to break that out a little bit in order to be able to leverage, that market. So it's a conscious decision. I don't think every hotel is a Bleisure hotel, but I think the ones that have the potential to have a bit of both, I think you have to focus some attention both on the product side and making sure that the product speaks to it. The merchandising side, how do you position yourself in the public channels, and how do you actually promote it? So those are definitely important areas.
Now, another aspect that you're looking at is regulatory changes. Talk to us about that.
Now that's sort of fun stuff, and let's not put people to sleep by too much of that. But I think the challenge, I think, distribution meets legal is how I see it, and it's not for everybody. Not everybody needs to be on top of all of this, but I think being aware of it is really critical. So if you think about the first sort of range of regulatory issues. I mean, everybody is aware of the GDPR and things like that because those were, introduced, and then obviously now it's all sort of everybody follows it, and it all is meant to follow it. But then there's been a sequence of other regulatory items. The Package Travel Directive, how are packages meant to be sold, and how is the booker protected, and that came into play during COVID and caused absolute mayhem for lots of online travel companies, particularly. Particularly those who specialize in that. But following on from there, there is also the the Omnibus Directive that looked at how discounts work, so that companies don't raise their price and then discount it and say, hey, here's a huge discount. I mean, so obviously there's monitoring of that going on. And then the bigger ones more lately, the Digital Marketing Act and the Digital Services Act. Those are sort of, the Digital Marketing Act specifically targets really large corporations like Google, Facebook, Booking.com, and so on. Some of the larger players in the market. Sort of talking about something called a gatekeeper. Are they being a gatekeeper? Are they controlling both sides of the business in a way that they are the only, they are the sort of really important gatekeeper? And it is a tricky concept, which again is not for everybody to understand, but sometimes, in our business, we love OTAs and we sometimes don't love OTAs. So it's just a question of whether they need to be regulated. So EU has been taking a closer look at it and saying, if your threshold of revenue is above a certain number, then they fall under the purview of that, and so it's relatively new, but again, it's important for companies to be aware of, because it then puts certain responsibilities that the OTAs are not always fulfilling in terms of disclosing information to the hotels about customer information, et cetera, which hotels can be quite sensitive about, because there's that question around, whose customer is it? So that's what the DMA is quite relevant. The Digital Services Act, not yet in play. DMA has just gone into play this year. At the moment, I think Booking.com does not come under its purview, so they are having discussions at the moment. And then you have the DSA, which is due to come in 2024, which sort of talks more about a little bit about the secret sauce or the algorithms that sort of sit behind what's on display. What do you say? How do you prioritize X hotel or Y hotel, etc. on a platform? And it's quite a mystery. And sometimes, hotel companies have generally sort of tell, I don't really understand why I've been pushed down. This is up. And the DSA potentially, I mean, again, I don't know, it's too early to say, and I'm no legal expert by any means, but that could sort of persuade companies to disclose a bit more about how they make those decisions. So all that, and then there's the short-term rental regulation that is being proposed, because obviously that is one of the hot topics in many major cities where apartments, Airbnb, rental spaces have been limited, and so are the short-term rental organizations following the rules that apply to hotels. So there's that sort of side of it. So EU is very much into quite regulatory mode, and then if you think about payments, there's a whole side of that, the Payment Services Directive, so 1, 2, and we are, I think, entering 3 now, which will also come into play in terms of who, and then so there's lots going on. So again, no legal expertise, but all I observe is that we need to be aware as an industry about all this. It has an impact on what we do. Payments, for example, has pushed the payment sectors quite forward in lots of different ways, as a result of legislation as well. So
So much to consider, especially, with the advancement of e-commerce, as you say, all these new acts coming in, regulatory stuff, so just keeping on top of all of that and how all your distribution partners play a part in that. And I know not just regulatory, but cybersecurity is a big issue when it comes to distribution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the more systems that are involved, and in our earlier conversation, you mentioned sort of channel managers as an example, but then if you look at a technology stack of a hotel, even in one independent hotel versus a global chain, there are so many pieces of technology. Now they all need to share information between them in one way or the other, and protecting each of those systems and ensuring that each system is compliant and making sure that all the protocol is followed is quite hard work. And hotels are one of the trickiest areas to ensure that there is proper security. And part of it is to do with the fact that there's a lot of employee churn as well. And so there's manual risk, not just a tech risk. So if you combine manual risk with the number of tech pieces at play, the two together make it a high risk area. Plus the fact that you are dealing with hotel um, guest payment details, guest profile information, etc. So there has been a whole bunch of things that have happened. Hotel companies that have been put at risk, travel companies that have been put at risk, and it is quite an important area to, particularly connected to distribution, that typically you wouldn't look at so much, but we have to be really careful with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's so many cyber threats now that obviously with the number of entry points potentially there within hotels, from your guests, your employees, as well as your third parties providers. Now, you've touched on this one already slightly, payments, but fintech, because there has been an explosion in the types of platforms and systems and apps and the way that, guests and TMCs expect to make payments as well. What do we need to be considering from that then for distribution?
I think one of the things is booker friendly, right? So bookers, we as travelers, or anybody else that we are catering to, want a level of simplicity of in terms of payment, and there's so many regional considerations, regional and cultural considerations as well with payments, which we don't automatically understand. So if you look at how some of the payment methods have evolved, alternative payment methods have evolved, and every European country has almost its own sort of alternative payment method. And so China has its own, or India has its own, Indonesia. I mean, you just go anywhere and it's got so many different options. So the traditional thinking that, hey, here's your price, here's how you pay, use a credit card. I mean, that sort of time has really sort of moved on. The other side of it is obviously all the Payment Services Directive Act type of regulation that's been coming through, not only in Europe, also in other countries, in terms of secondary authentication protocols and things like that. That has had an impact as well. So if you combine how people are traveling, and how the regional expectations or cultural expectations of being comfortable with paying in your own currency or your own payment method, and you blend all that together, so that sort of comes to the world that we are in, which is you want more options in terms of payment, whether it's in the form of Google Wallet or Apple Wallet, or is it just a direct sort of, some people just want direct transfers still, believe it or not, or apart from the regular VCCs and so on. So so there's a lot that's been happening, and if you look at one of the biggest sort of changes that happened in the last few years, again, I mean, the driver of that change was Booking.com. Expedia, for example, always had a payment collect, Expedia Collect, as well as Hotel Collect. But Booking had only Hotel Collect for a very long time, and they then invested massively into this program and developed lots of different alternative ways to pay. So that's changed quite a lot, and hotel companies are, again, we're not travel tech companies, so therefore I feel sometimes, for many reasons, we are a little bit behind the travel tech companies, and for good reason, I would say, as well. But hotel companies are following suit as well, The other thing that has changed substantially is the whole buy now, pay later piece of the puzzle, which was never a case before. So there's the risks are hedged and the financial risks is hedged in lots of different ways. But it's immensely popular, so popular that, again, government regulation is coming in after the event rather than before, where now there is much more oversight, financial oversight over the BNPL schemes in the UK, for example.
I mean, as you say, there's so much to consider there, and certainly with the buy now, pay later, that is a whole minefield in itself. And the opportunities, though, making it more accessible to hoteliers, even independent small properties can get involved with that and open up that opportunity for accessing more guests.
Absolutely, no. I mean, it has been very much proven, and there are a lot of companies that are doing quite good work supporting that sort of that adjustment almost into that space. Absolutely.
Well, Vineeth, I mean, we've pretty much come to the end of 20 minutes, which is, for us to sort of delve into the 18 trends. There is so much more that you and I could talk about. But for the listeners, please check out Vineeth's article on LinkedIn, the 18 trends to watch in hotel distribution 2023 and beyond. He touches on direct bookings, new marketplace models and platforms, group bookings, as well as data insights. Tap him, and I'm sure, Vineeth, you'll be open to conversations to explore a lot more of your speciality really here in distribution.
Absolutely. Love this topic. It's crazy. It's hard to tame. So therefore, here I am talking about it. Thanks, Ryan.
No problem. I appreciate you joining me today. So that was Vineeth Purushothaman, the Regional Director, Commercial Planning and Distribution EMEA at Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. Check out the rest of the episodes as part of Season 3 for Hoteliers Voice on travelmarket.life. You can find that on Google or Deezer or Spotify. We are very pleased to say that our number of audience has more than doubled in the last few months. Thank you ever so much for listening to our show. Sign up to our newsletter either on www.travelmarket.life or head to our LinkedIn account where you can get regular updates of all the latest episodes and content that we're producing. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Ryan Haynes. Ciao for now.
For more, go to Travel Market Life. The music sensation by Zach Nelson is reproduced under license from Storyblocks. Travel Market Life is a Haynes Marcoms digital marketing agency production serving the travel and technology industries.